step into the enthralling world of Miller's Girl, where a simple student-teacher relationship spirals into a compelling saga of passion, betrayal, and dramatic repercussions. Follow Ku, a lonely writer who finds a kindred spirit in Jonathan, her teacher struggling with his unfulfilled literary dreams. As their connection deepens, boundaries blur, leading to forbidden encounters and unsettling revelations. Witness the intensity of their interactions and the chaos that ensues, challenging societal norms and personal ethics. This gripping thriller promises to keep you on the edge of your seat until the very end. Discover the dark consequences of ambition and desire in this must-watch cinematic journey. So, the movie kicks off with this girl, Ku Sweet, right? She's living all alone in this kind of spooky, deserted house because her folks are overseas. Writing is her thing. It's like her escape from loneliness. But guess what? Today's not just another gloomy day for her. She meets someone who totally gets her. Someone who's also into writing. Her teacher, Jonathan. Now, Jonathan isn't your young, hotshot writer. He's this middle-aged guy who never really hit it big in writing. So, he turned to teaching. Now, cut to a scene where Jonathan walks into his classroom, which, by the way, has 0 students, and he's holding these flowers he got himself. Just then, Carol, another student, pops in unexpectedly. Jonathan's all puzzled and goes, "How are you here? The class isn't even starting yet." And Carol's like, "Yeah, I know. I just don't dig crowds much." So Jonathan suggests she starts reading some of the books from the syllabus, but plot twist. Ku has already devoured those books. Enter Winnie Black, a friend of Ku's and also a classmate. After some chit-chat, Ku and Winnie decide to grab a bite. And here's where it gets juicy. When they leave, Jonathan spots an adult book among Ku's stuff. I mean, talk about unexpected, right? So, right after the whole book discovery scene, Jonathan's buddy, Boris, swings by just to drop off some coffee. But get this, he snags that adult book Jonathan found and starts flipping through it. Both guys are floored when they realize it's actually one of Jonathan's own novels. Like, what are the odds? Later that evening, Jonathan's chatting with his wife, Beatrice, who's swamped with work as usual. He's kind of proud and tells her about a student, yep, Ku, digging into his book during class. Mid-conversation, Beatrice gets a call from her pal Amy, but once that wraps up, she and Jonathan try to have a cozy drink together. Just as they're getting into it, bam, another call for Beatrice, and Jonathan's just sitting there, super annoyed. The next day's even more of a soap opera. Jonathan vents to Boris about the whole phone interruption fiasco, and Boris cracks up, teasing him about it. Then, out of nowhere, they spot Ku coming out of the jungle. Jonathan, being his curious self, asks her if she's scared wandering through there. Ku just throws back, "I am the scariest thing in those jungles," which gets a good laugh out of Jonathan. Back at school, things get spicy when Winnie, trying to grab Boris's attention, dramatically drops her books. Oh, she knows what she's doing, and Boris calls her out like, "What do you really want?" Clearly, she's flirting. Carol catches this act too and can't help but tell Winnie she's totally nuts. After the little show, Winnie and Carol head off to Carol's place to hang out. Later at Carol's house, things got a bit tense. Carol was stressing over a college application question asking about her greatest accomplishment, and honestly, nothing they talked about felt all that special. Then Winnie, always the instigator, suggests, "What if you turned your supposed affair with your teacher into a scandalous story?" Carol's like, "But Jonathan's 20 years older than me," trying to dismiss the idea. But Winnie, ever the devil's advocate, brushes it off, saying it's all pretty normal these days. And get this, Winnie starts raving about how Jonathan is such a gentleman, perfect for Ku's first real crush or something. She even gossiped about how Jonathan seems to favor Carol in class, which made Carol blush and kind of fueled her crush even more. The next day, things escalated quickly. Ku couldn't take her eyes off Jonathan, and he definitely noticed. He casually suggests, "Meet me after class," which totally sounded like a plot twist in the making. Post-class, Jonathan tried to invite Boris for dinner, playing it cool, but Boris just moonwalks out of there. Left alone, Jonathan attempts Boris's dance step, just as Ku walks in. They share a laugh, brushing off the awkward moment. Now, Jonathan was seriously impressed by a paragraph Ku wrote, like, memorizing it, level of impressed. Carol noticed Jonathan's attention to her work, which made her day. Then, Jonathan lays down a challenge for Carol. Write a short story in the style of her favorite author, and he'd award her full marks for the midterm. Carol, thrilled, jumps at the offer and even throws in, "I've read your book too," quoting lines from it like a super fan. Jonathan, clearly flattered and intrigued, invites her to discuss the assignment over the weekend at a cozy little spot. So, that evening, the drama heats up when Boris, Jonathan, and his wife Beatrice hit up this restaurant, right? And guess who's working there as a waitress? Yep, Winnie. Beatrice, catching on to the gossip, nudges Jonathan, asking, "Is she the one you were talking about?" Jonathan tries to play it cool, saying, "No, this is Ku," but you can tell Beatrice isn't buying it. She's visibly jealous and starts throwing shade right there, dissing Jonathan in front of Boris like, "You've lost your writer's mojo. You haven't penned anything in ages. You're just a regular teacher now." Fast forward to the weekend, and things get even more movie-like. Carol heads to this quaint spot Jonathan had mentioned. And, not surprisingly, Jonathan shows up too. They're sitting there, and some dude starts reciting a poem, which totally captivates Jonathan. Meanwhile, Carol's sneaking glances at him, probably thinking all kinds of romantic thoughts. After the poem wraps up, Carol steps outside for a smoke, and Jonathan, being all smooth, joins her, and they end up sharing her cigarette. It's like one of those classic film noir scenes. Seriously. The next day, Kara totally turns it up a notch, rocking this stunning outfit that catches both Boris and Jonathan off guard. She's serving up coffee, complimenting Boris on his killer biscuits. He apparently bakes the best around. Meanwhile, in Jonathan's class, he's briefing Winnie and Carol about how he's planning a weekend getaway with his wife, meaning he's cutting out early. Amidst this, Ku brings up a discussion about the author she's writing about and nudges Jonathan about picking up writing again. Just as Jonathan exits, Boris swings by, and Winnie snags his phone to set up a lunch date. But plot twist. Jonathan's romantic escape with his wife hits the brakes because she's swamped with work. She realizes her phone's been left in Jonathan's bag, gives him a ring, they chat briefly, and end the call. Now, as Jonathan's leaving Kara's place, the scene's straight out of a romance flick. It starts pouring, and there's Kara, stepping out in this thin dress, looking like a scene from a classic film. They lock eyes, and bam, they share this intense kiss. After that, Jonathan heads home. Back at his pad, Jonathan gets an email from Ku. His wife, feeling the tension, tells him she can't focus with him around. So, Jonathan takes off to a secluded cabin. There, he prints out a story Kara sent him. It's an adult-themed tale featuring a student-teacher relationship eerily similar to his and Ku's. This gets Jonathan all stirred up, leading him to strip down. But here's where things take a turn. Everything shifts dramatically the following day. So, the next part is quite the roller coaster, man. Jonathan, who usually keeps in touch with Ku, suddenly goes cold. When Ku confronts him about it, he bluntly tells her he didn't like her story, saying it's full of mistakes, and it's all about their supposed affair. He's like, "We're just a teacher and a student, nothing more." This totally crushes Carol. Jonathan, not mincing words, threatens to fail her if she doesn't rewrite it. Carol fires back, accusing him of being afraid that she wrote something he couldn't. She even calls him a common writer, and dares him to fail her right there. Heartbroken, Carol storms off and ends up drowning her sorrows with Winnie. Meanwhile, Jonathan is visibly stressed out. His wife, catching on to his mood, presses him about what's wrong. He spills about Carol's provocative story, which ironically gets his wife kind of intrigued. But before they can really delve into it, Boris barges in, leaving Jonathan frustrated all over again. Back at Carol's, she vents to Winnie, claiming Jonathan was just playing with her emotions. She concocts a plan for Winnie to distract Boris by flirting with him. Winnie gives it a shot, but Boris doesn't bite. So, in a bold move to really grab his attention, Carol and Winnie strip down, snap a few risque photos, and send them Boris's way. This drama bomb works like a charm. Boris jets out of Jonathan's place the moment he sees the pics. Just then, Jonathan's wife gets the shocker via a phone call. The whole school's buzzing about Jonathan and Carol's alleged affair. She confronts him, bewildered and hurt. asking if the rumors of an affair are true, pushing him to confess if there's more to the story. But Jonathan sticks to his guns, denying everything. The next day, Carol's a no-show in class. She's holed up in the vice principal's office instead. Things got real when the vice principal laid it out straight, asking both Carol and Jonathan, "What's going on?" Carol spilled everything. How Jonathan gave her a midterm assignment in advance, their smoke breaks together, and their meetups outside school. Jonathan, on the other hand, stumbled through his answers, his hesitation practically shouting guilt to the vice principal, who ended up suspending him from his job. Outside the office, Boris gave Jonathan a piece of his mind, telling him he should have known his limits. And now he was paying the price for crossing them. Boris walked away, leaving Jonathan to digest the mess he'd gotten himself into. Back home, when Jonathan broke the news of his firing to his wife, she bombarded him with questions, doubting his version of the story. "Did something happen between you two?" she pressed. Jonathan denied it, but she wasn't buying it. She pushed further, asking if he had feelings for Carol. Jonathan clammed up, and that silence said it all. They ended up in a huge fight, airing out all their grievances until his wife declared she wanted a divorce. Meanwhile, Carol was unfazed by the chaos she'd stirred. She even told Jonathan that he'd underestimated her, and now he was going to see her true capabilities. Ku, who had been observing all this unfold, chalked up the entire saga as her greatest achievement. When she finally met Jonathan, the emotional weight of everything overwhelmed her, and she broke down in tears. Jonathan had been more than just a teacher to her. He'd been a catalyst for change in her life, providing moments of happiness and peace. In a twist of fate, both Jonathan and his wife found themselves unemployed. The movie leaves us hanging with a poignant question. Will Jonathan find his way back to writing amidst this turmoil? And that's how the movie wraps up. As Miller's Girl comes to a close, we're left to ponder the devastating effects of blurred boundaries and unchecked desires. This film masterfully entangles us in the lives of Ku and Jonathan, whose seemingly innocent academic relationship evolves into a complex web of passion, deceit, and ambition. Their story challenges us to reflect on the moral limits of relationships and the consequences of crossing those lines. Jonathan's career and personal life unravel spectacularly, leaving us questioning the true cost of forbidden love and the pursuit of personal fulfillment at the expense of others. If you found yourself captivated by the intense drama and complex characters of Miller's Girl, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more insightful movie recaps and discussions. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Jonathan's downfall was a result of his own actions, or was he manipulated beyond his control? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's dive into this provocative discussion.